Welcome to this webinar entitled Nutrition for Optimal Living. My name is Marley Finkelstein, and I am a registered dietitian and the Integrative Wellness Coordinator at Philadelphia Fight. Thank you so much for joining. A little bit about me. First and foremost, I am an educator, and I have taught various subjects and disciplines throughout my life. I have been practicing dietetics for 5 years now. I have experience in working in weight management, diabetes management, acute care, mental health, behavioral health and recovery, and now infectious disease. I have been at Fight for about 2 years, and I work at all 4 of our clinics. I work at the Jonathan Lax Treatment Center, which is our HIV primary care clinic serving low-income members of the community. We also have a primary care clinic called John Bell Health Center that does not require the positive diagnosis. And then we have a youth clinic called YHEP and a pediatric clinic as well. So I do encourage questions. I ask that you save them at the end of the presentation. There will definitely be some time. All right, so I have no formal disclosures. I do want to mention that the information presented in this webinar is meant for the general population. So if you have any allergies, food intolerances, various medical conditions, you most likely require a more individualized nutrition plan. In that case, I do recommend meeting with a dietitian to get the best nutrition advice for your individual needs. Here are my learning objectives. And before we begin, I just want to know what you want to know. So everyone take a moment. I'm actually going to start a clock and see. I'm going to give you 30 seconds right now. I want you to write down a question related to nutrition, whether it's something that you and your friends are talking about, you read on the news, or something you're just generally interested in learning. I hope to answer that question by the end, but if I don't, I'm going to ask that you ask that question at the end. So take a moment right now, just write down a question. I'm going to give you guys about 15 more seconds. All right, hopefully you have your question written down and we're going to get started. All right, so before we can talk about nutrition for optimal living, we need to discuss the aspects that make up optimal living or health and wellness. Various theories exist as to what makes up your overall wellness, but they all have many similarities among them. Here are 2 different models. On the left-hand side, you see the 8 dimensions of wellness. This is directly from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or also known as SAMHSA. Then we have Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs on the right-hand side. That's that triangle right there. And really what this is showing us is that in order to grow or optimize your well-being, you need to reach or fulfill various needs first. So as you climb the pyramid, you can see that the needs become more complex. You can see that you cannot optimize your well-being if you do not reach the basic needs like physiological and basic needs and safety needs. In the next slide, I'm going to discuss the various basic needs, which is the basic foundation of this model, and they need to be fulfilled in order to optimize your wellness. All right, so here's a list of all of the basic needs that I believe are vital to survival. Some of them are from Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some of them I added from just my own experience in working with different populations. You can see nutrition, sleep, stress management, physical health, environment, and of course there's subsectors among those. I really like this image here. I found this on Google. It's a health mind map. And really what I'm trying to stress here is that none of these needs, none of these things are standing alone. They're all interconnected, right? So if we're not getting a good amount of sleep, a good night's sleep, we might not be able to exercise, right? Or if we're stressed out, we might not be making the right healthy diet choices, right? So these are interconnected, and I really wanted to bring this to light because this presentation is only covering nutrition, right? We're only talking about nutrition here. So in order to be healthy and really maximize your overall wellness, you need to kind of check mark all of these different things. All right, so let's just jump right into nutrition. Here are the basics of nutrition under this umbrella of nutrition. There's 3 basic things, and that's water, micronutrients, and macronutrients. We are made up of more than 60% water, okay? So I'm sure you've heard that before. we need to drink at least 64 ounces of water a day, or 8 cups, 8 ounces. Now, this is the general recommendation. If you want to be more precise, take your weight, divide it by 2, and that's the number of ounces you should be consuming in a day. So for example, a 200-pound man should be drinking about 100 ounces of water a day. I know that's a lot. Now that I have video, I'll show you. This is 32 ounces. All right, so I strive to drink at least 2, because that's 64 ounces a day, okay? It's quite a lot of water, but the more you drink, the more your body gets used to it. And then we have micronutrients. These are vitamins and minerals. We can find these in a variety of different foods, especially our fresh produce. And I should take that back, especially produce, not fresh. We'll get into that in a little bit. You can also get these things in a multivitamin as well. And then we have macronutrients. There's 3: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And these are the things that provide calories or energy. So I'd like everyone to just take a moment and think about the body as a car, okay? I'm not a mechanic, so bear with me here. All right, so water is like the oil in the car, keeping everything moving properly, right? If you don't have oil in your car, what happens to the car? It burns out, right? I know this is a rhetorical question, so I'll answer my own questions for you guys. So yeah, the water keeps everything fluid, keeping things lubricated, keeping things moving properly. If you don't have enough, your body can't work optimally. And then we have the micronutrients. These are the things that keep the structure of the car strong. For example, calcium for the bones. And then we have macronutrients, and this is the fuel or the gasoline allowing your car to move. All right, so I don't know who here has a Lamborghini. I don't, okay? Maybe one of you guys do. Maybe you all don't, I don't know. But let's pretend I'm Oprah for a moment and I'm giving everyone a Lamborghini. You get one, everyone gets a Lamborghini, okay? Are you going to fuel your Lamborghini with regular gas or premium gas? Well, I'll answer your question. It's definitely going to be premium gas, because that regular gas is going to ruin that engine, right? So I want everyone to take their hands and put them on their chest right now. Underneath your hands is your vessel, is your body. It's your Lamborghini, okay? You get one. So take care of it, right? You get one of these, you're not going to get another, right? So you need to make sure that you take care of your body. What you eat and drink determines your health status, okay? Obviously, we're not going to cut open our bodies and see little men working like this, right? But we do have lab values, blood pressure, things like that, to give us indications as to what is going on inside of our bodies. So don't take them lightly. Take them seriously, and use them as clues as to how you can make improvements in your wellness. All right, so metabolism, I'm sure you've heard this word before. So metabolism is the sum of what you consume and what you expend. So the things that you consume are food and drink, and these are made up of, this basically makes up your energy intake. Okay, there's not much more. You just eat and drink, right? And then there's the energy expenditure, which consists of the basal metabolic rate, your exercise, and your daily activities. So your basal metabolic rate is where a majority of your expenditure comes from. The basal metabolic rate is the number of calories your body requires at rest. So you sitting here listening requires energy. Your sleep and your digestive processes requires energy. The things that your body does that you don't really think twice about, that's what makes up your basal metabolic rate. Exercise, as we know, adds to your energy expenditure. And then daily activities, and these are things that include like taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or walking your dog, things that are built into your daily routine. Okay, so when it comes to weight, this is like everyone wants to know, what's the magic recipe for losing weight? There isn't one. It's simple math. Calories in versus calories out. Okay, so in order to lose weight, you either need to burn more calories and or eat less. It's that simple. Okay, in order to gain weight, you tip the scale the opposite way. And then balanced weight, of course, weight maintenance, you just match what your body is burning in your calories eaten. Okay, it's this simple. We have 3 macronutrients, as I mentioned. I put in alcohol here because it does have calories, and I just wanted to show you the breakdown in the differences between them. So protein and carbohydrates have about 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram, so almost twice as much, and alcohol is 7 calories per gram. So I do have, I made these little images recently. These are each a gram, right? So it's to show you that the volume is all equal. And you can see that fat has 9 calories per gram. So that's quite a lot of energy in the same amount of volume as a gram of pure protein or a gram of pure carbohydrate, right? So it does have a lot of calories per portion. So that means that you can't really go crazy on the portion of something that's high in fat, like nuts or peanut butter, things like that. That calorie amount adds up very quickly. And then alcohol is 7 calories per gram. So if you're having a beer, for example, that's going to be a mixture of alcohol and carbohydrate, which is 11 calories per gram. And you're definitely going to have more than 1 gram if you're having beer, right? Same thing with alcohol. If you're just having just liquor, okay, by itself, it's going to be 7 calories per gram. So you can see how that kind of has some differences there. Here is the recommended calorie distribution for adults. The percentages of each macronutrient is the percentage of one's total caloric intake. So for example, if a person requires 2,000 calories per day, 45 to 65% is carbohydrates, which is about 900 to 1,300 calories of your total intake. For protein, 200 to 700 calories of your total intake, and 400 to 700 calories of total fat. Now, I do want to mention here that there is a difference in fat, and we'll go into that in more detail, but the majority should be unsaturated fat, and the recommendation is to limit the saturated fats to no more than 10% of your total intake. All right, so let's review the 3 macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. We'll start with protein. Protein builds and repairs parts of the body, maintains bones, muscles, and skin. There's 2 main sources of protein. When I say protein, you probably off the bat think of animal sources like chicken, poultry, beef, pork, fish, seafood, eggs, yogurt, cottage cheese, and milk. All right, but there are some sources of protein that come from plants, and these include soy, like tofu or edamame, peas, lentils, beans, any kind, whole grains, and we're going to talk more about that, nuts, any variety, nut butters like peanut butter, almond butter, things like that, seeds, all kinds, and some vegetables. So technically, we do not need to eat animals to get our protein. Here are some of those plant-based proteins in case you're unfamiliar. Let me get my little drawing. What do we have here? Sorry, bear with me. I'm playing with this. So spotlight, maybe this. Sorry, guys. There we go. I don't know if you can see this. Maybe your nuts, nut butters, lentils, tofu, edamame in the right-hand corner. All right. Fat. All right. So lots of important roles in the body for fat. Supports cell growth, produces important hormones, absorbs fat-soluble vitamins like vitamins A, D, E, and K. Helps protect your organs and keeps your body warm, maintains communication between cells. So lots of really important roles. There's 2 main sources of fat, saturated and unsaturated fat, which we're about to talk about. And then there's trans fats, which we'll get to a little bit later. All right, so 2 main sources of fat. Saturated fat comes from animals, increases your LDL or your bad cholesterol, and increases your risk of cardiovascular disease. And these include meat and dairy, essentially. Coconut oil is the exception in that it is a saturated fat, but does not come from animals. Then we have unsaturated fat, comes from plants, decreases your LDL or your bad cholesterol, increases your good cholesterol. And these include mono and polyunsaturated fats. Both are good for you. All right, so then those food sources are going to be olive oil, canola oil, soybean oil, avocado oil, sunflower seed oil, etc. Avocado, nuts, nut butters, and seeds, and then fish. Fish is the exception in that it is an unsaturated fat, but doesn't come from a plant, okay? I would say eggs fall in this category as well. We're gonna talk more about that as well. All right, so I do want to make this distinction between saturated fat versus cholesterol. So there are 2 types of cholesterol, one that exists in our foods, that's your dietary cholesterol, and one that exists in our bodies. All animals, including humans, because we are animals after all, produce cholesterol. We all produce cholesterol. Therefore, we do not need to consume it from foods necessarily. Okay, so since the 1960s, it was thought that cholesterol-rich foods contribute to high cholesterol in the body, increasing your risk of cardiovascular disease. And they put a hard limit on not consuming any more than 300 milligrams of cholesterol per day. All right, so the dietary guidelines are updated every 5 years. And in 2015, the dietary guidelines were updated to state that cholesterol is no longer a nutrient of concern for overconsumption. We do still recommend that people do not need to obtain cholesterol through diet and should eat as little as possible. It is the saturated fats that are increasing our blood cholesterol and our increased risk of cardiovascular disease, not the dietary cholesterol. However, if you think back at the slide I just went over, foods that are rich in cholesterol, which are your animal source foods, are also rich in saturated fats, right? So they do go hand in hand in some way. But we used to think that eggs, for example, should be limited. And I do want to talk more about eggs. Before I do, I just wanted to mention that a single food item has many nutrients. Okay, so when I refer to a food that's rich in one nutrient, it does have other nutrients, but I'm referring to it with the richness of one nutrient because that's what makes up a majority of that food item. So for example, fish, right? So I mentioned that fish was the exception in our unsaturated fats. Salmon, for a half a fillet, has 6 grams of saturated fat and 15 grams of unsaturated fat. So I would say fish is a pretty good source of unsaturated fat. However, it does have saturated fat. So I did want to mention that not all foods is just one nutrient, right? So the majority is going to be unsaturated fat. So let's take eggs, for example. So there's been a lot of confusion about eggs. They've gotten a really bad rep. And if you take a look, let me see if I can do my spotlight here. I'm just going to draw because then I know I'm doing it. All right, so saturated fat here is 1.6 grams, okay? Actually, that's not what I wanted to do. Here we go. Cholesterol is 184 milligrams. Okay, so we knew before that we shouldn't be consuming more than 300 milligrams per day. Well, 2 eggs definitely exceeds that. So that's why people were saying you can't eat enough, you can't eat too many eggs, right? So we know that eggs have saturated and unsaturated fat. If you look at the total fat here, it's 4.5. Saturated is 1.6, so 4.5 minus 1.6 is going to be 2.9 grams of unsaturated fat. Well, that makes up a majority of the fat in this egg, right? So eggs are actually pretty rich in unsaturated fat. I also wanted to talk about egg yolk versus egg white. A lot of people kind of skip the yolk. Take a look at all of these nutrients, right? All of these nutrients are in the egg yolk alone. Egg white is just protein and water. So I'm often asked, can I eat eggs every day? Or how many should I eat a week? Really, I recommend generally varying your diet, right? Never eating the exact same thing every day. Maybe one day you have eggs, maybe the next you have oatmeal with fruit, maybe the next you have some whole grain toast with some peanut butter. So just be sure to vary your diet so that you're consuming a larger variety of nutrients overall. But I would say it's safe to say, as long as you don't have any underlying conditions with your heart or anything like that, I think you could probably have at least 2 eggs a day, or about 2 eggs a day. I think that would be fine. Okay, trans fats. Ooh, that thing didn't go away. There we go. Okay. All right, trans fats. So trans fat undergoes a chemical alteration called hydrogenation. So basically they add hydrogen to saturate the fat. So they take a liquid like a vegetable oil and add the hydrogens to make it a solid form of fat. So this is, why would they do this? Well, it's inexpensive to produce. It creates a long shelf life for products, and it also creates a desirable taste and flaky texture, especially for fried foods. So you can see the food sources listed here as to where you can find trans fats. So there are adverse health effects. Research shows a connection between trans fat intake and increased level of bad cholesterol. A study at Harvard University reported that people who ate the highest amounts of trans fat had twice the heart attack risk of those who consumed only a little. So we know, it's very well known that trans fats are not good for us. In fact, they banned them, okay? Actually, that's my next slide, but they did ban trans fats. We'll talk more about that. The problem, however, is that there's a labeling loophole, okay? This here shows 0 grams of trans fat, right here, Okay, so you see this here. However, you can see these red circles here that hydrogenated oils are in that tub of margarine. Okay, so the regulation basically states that if there's 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving, they can round down to 0. So the serving here is 1 tablespoon, 0 grams. So then maybe let's just say there's 0.5 grams in this 1 tablespoon. If you're having 2 tablespoons, which is pretty likely, you're having 1 gram of trans fat. And how many times are you eating this a week, right? So they add up very quickly. So it's really important that you read your labels and that you actually read the ingredient list. That's how you know if there's trans fat. Luckily, as I mentioned, there is a ban on trans fat. So in June 2015, the FDA banned trans fats. The industry has 3 years to reformulate products. In May 2018, the FDA extended the reformulation process for 1 year. Of course, several manufacturers petitioned the ban, and for those who petitioned, they had their compliance date extended until January 2021. So hopefully they'll be gone by 2021, as long as everything stays the way that they last described this, okay? So we talked about protein, we talked about animal and plant-based sources, we spoke about fats, unsaturated, the heart-healthy fats, saturated, the not-so-healthy fats, cholesterol, and trans fats now. So now we're gonna talk about carbohydrates. All right, so carbohydrates are the body's most preferred source of energy. The brain actually only uses carbohydrates, will not use protein or fat, okay? So they're very important. All carbohydrates break down into sugar. I might be referring to carbohydrates as carbs, okay? So that's just FYI, I will be saying carbs probably just out of habit. And as I mentioned, they all turn into sugar. They break down into sugar. That's just how our body uses it as energy. It's totally normal. We also call sugar glucose. So if you ever hear glucose, that's sugar. And this is a sugar molecule in front of you here. So sugar enters the blood to be used as energy. Several hormones function to maintain your sugar levels in your blood. You know, the most common hormone being insulin, which removes sugar from your blood, and glucagon is another hormone that actually puts the sugar back into the blood to maintain homeostasis. Here are all of our carbohydrate sources: breads, crackers, cereal, pasta, rice, and grains, starchy vegetables like potato, corn, and peas, beans and legumes like lentils, milk, soy milk, yogurt, fruit and fruit juices, and then our sweets: cakes, cookies, ice cream, jam, jelly, honey, and sugar. Okay, all of these things turn to sugar. If you take a look at this list, however, some of these things turn to sugar much faster than others. Let's take a look at cake, for example. Cake is going to turn to sugar much faster than, let's say, beans, or ice cream is going to turn to sugar much faster than corn, right? So we know this, right? And the things that are sweet, or the things that are already in the form of sugar, are going to turn to sugar faster. That makes sense, right? So we do know that they all turn to sugar, all of them, right? But we know that some of them turn to sugar faster than others. So we can actually take this list of carbohydrates and break it into 2 groups. And that's where complex versus simple carbs come in. Your simple carbs simply turn to sugar, okay? This is gonna be your white breads, your white sugary cereals, juice, soda, cake, cookies, donuts, all the good stuff, right? The tasty, delicious stuff that people think, well, I'll get there in a second. Okay, so then we have complex carbs. That's going to be your fruits and vegetables, whole wheat bread, oatmeal, whole wheat pasta, things like that. All right, so there are a difference in carbs. They're not all created equal. Let's take wheat, for example. This is what wheat looks like when it grows from the ground. I'm going to take one of these little grains off and make it really big, and here it is, your whole grain. All right, so naturally, there's 3 layers to the whole grain. The outside layer is the bran, that's where all your fiber is. The germ is where all your little nutrients are, and then your endosperm is the white starchy part. So since the late 1800s, when new milling technology allowed the bran and germ to be easily and cheaply separated from the endosperm, most of the grains around the world have been eaten as refined grains. Well, this quickly led to a disastrous and widespread nutrition problem. Many different deficiency diseases like pellagra and beriberi. Okay, so people were actually dying of this refinement. So rather than them saying, you know what, let's just stop doing this, which would be the smart way, right? They just said, well, let's just add a bunch of nutrients in. And that's exactly what they did. And if you ever look at a label, it says enriched flour or enriched wheat flour. That is exactly what this white grain is with the added enrichment. Let's take a look at what the breakdown looks like. So if you ate that whole grain, that's the green. You're going to get 100% of the nutrients your body needs. The red is what you see when it was refined, and that's why people were getting sick and dying. But then they said, well, let's add those nutrients in, and that's the enrichment. However, they only added 5 nutrients, okay? Vitamin B1, B2, B3, iron, and folate. Fiber, however, was left alone. 25% of the fiber in from your whole wheat flour to your enriched flour, still 25% here. This is a problem for me. Oops. Okay. Before I jump to the next slide, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, individuals who eat at least 3 servings of whole grains per day reduce their risk of heart disease by 25 to 36%, stroke by 37%, type 2 diabetes by 21 to 27%, cancer of the digestive system by 21 to 43%, and hormone-related cancer by 10 to 40%. Obesity as well was decreased. I don't have the percentage there for some reason. But yeah, so eating your whole grains is awesome, much better for your health. So this is going to be white bread versus wheat bread, white rice versus brown or wild rice, white pasta versus wheat pasta. We can even talk about juice versus the actual fruit. So I'm going to take a couple of these examples and show you here. So we have the white rice, the white rice and the brown rice. Sorry, I'm going to draw instead. All right, so I have a bowl of white rice, a bowl of brown rice, same amount, 1 cup. Calories are about the same, 206 to 216, okay? Protein's similar. Here's the biggest difference. It's the fiber, right? 0.6 grams for the white rice, 3.5 grams of fiber in brown rice. That's significant, okay? That's quite significant. So that's why this brown rice is going to be better. Not only that, not only are you going to get the benefits of the fiber and those other nutrients we just showed you on the chart, but that white rice, right? This white rice here, you're going to eat it, probably stay full for about an hour or 2. You eat the brown rice, you're staying full for 3 or 4 hours. That's right. Fiber is extremely satiating. It helps fill you up and keep you full. So that's why these whole grains are actually going to be a better option for you. Taking that same idea and applying it to juice and fruit. So this is about the same number of grams. I've got 1 cup of juice, which is about 248 grams, and 2 medium oranges at 262 grams. So pretty similar. Calories are pretty similar. Protein is quite different. 1.74 grams of protein in the orange juice, 2.46 grams of protein in the actual fruit. And then you got orange juice has 0.5 gram of fiber, 0.5 grams of fiber for a cup, and then 6.3 grams of fiber in the fruit. That is extremely significant, right? Not only that, you're going to be full, you're going to feel satiated, and you get 2 oranges, not just a cup of juice, right? So you see that makes a really big difference. All right, so our sugar molecule by itself, once it's by itself like this, it goes off into the blood to be used as energy. Here is a simple carb, okay? 2 sugar molecules bound together. All the body has to do is break down this bond. Once it's broken, the sugar molecules are free on their own, and they're gonna go off into the blood to be used as energy. But then we have a complex carb, many sugar molecules bound together. Body just has to break down the bond. This sugar molecule goes off into the blood to be used as energy, and now the body has to work on the rest of the chain. The amount of time that your body is working to break down that chain, you're staying full. I'm gonna move these. Probably don't need to be doing this, but I am. All right. And that's why they call them complex carbs. You see how complex this glycogen is in the middle? All of those little things, those are sugar molecules bound together. And then there's different branches. So the body only breaks down one sugar molecule clip, and the sugar molecule goes off into the blood, and then has to work on the rest of the chain, and then a different branch, and then a different branch. So this is why they call them complex carbs. Look how complex this image is. So generally, the more complex the carb, the better. All right, fiber. So fiber keeps us full longer, more satiating. Because we're going to stay full longer, we may not eat as much, so it will aid in weight loss. Keeps our stools regular, keeps our colon healthy, lowers our cholesterol, and lowers our blood sugars. Quite a lot of benefits from one nutrient, fiber. So kind of would be crazy not to eat fiber. I want to show you guys something. So let's say I have that white rice versus the brown rice, or even the orange juice versus the orange. I'm going to draw a little graph right here. Okay. So let's say I eat the white rice, or I eat that simple carb, blood sugar spikes up like this. But then let's say I have the whole grain, blood sugar goes up nice and slow. Okay. You get a sustained amount of energy. You see here, this is the same amount of sugar, right? It's still going to raise up to the same amount of sugar. However, the simple carb is going to spike up, and then, as you would expect, it's going to go back down very, very quickly. The complex carb is going to go up nice and slow and give you a sustained amount of energy. So that's not only that, and that's why there's lower blood sugars in the ones that have fiber, more fiber. All right. All right, so where do we find fiber? Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes like lentils, nuts, and seeds. All right, what do all of these things have in common? Where do we find these foods from? They come from the ground. They're plants. Okay, so I am in no way telling you to become a vegetarian, unless you want to. But if you don't, I'm not telling you to do that. Okay, but what I am telling you is that the more plants that you eat, the better your health, the better your weight, the better your blood sugars, the better your cholesterol, okay? The better you feel, okay? So not only are you going to get the benefits of fiber from these plant-based foods, but you're also going to get the healthy fats, the unsaturated fats versus the saturated fats, leading to better cardiovascular outcomes. All right, so your whole grains are listed here, the third bullet point. Here are all of your whole grains: 100% whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, brown or wild rice, quinoa, oatmeal, corn or popcorn, rye, farro, barley, bulgur. Okay, here's some examples of some whole grains. All right, so I just wanted to show you, so reiterating, carbohydrates include fiber, natural sugars, and added sugars. On this label here, you can see that right here, okay? There's your total carbs. Underneath that is the fiber and total sugar. Now, this is a newer label, and I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. But the nice thing about this new label is that they've added this row of added sugars. This is huge. This has made such a difference in the information that we have now about food items. Manufacturers are adding whatever they want to foods, right? They're adding sugar. A lot of them are adding sugar. Now we know how much they're adding versus what's natural to the food item. So you see total sugars is 12 grams, added sugars is 10 grams, which is quite a lot. If you subtract the two, that's 2 grams. That's how much sugar is natural to the food. Okay. All right, so fiber, here are the recommended amounts for ages and genders. You can take a look at where you fall. And then on the bottom, I just listed a few different food items that have a good amount of fiber. I just want to point out and give a shout out to beans and lentils. Take a look at that. 17.5 grams of fiber, 16 grams of fiber, okay, versus this like 4, 5 gram fiber. So they're really, really high in fiber, really good sources of protein, okay. We have sugar. As I mentioned, sugar is natural to some foods. There's also added sugar. Okay, so the natural sugars are going to be in the fruits, the grains, starches, legumes, things like that. But they also have that fiber, as I mentioned, which slows down that sugar from absorbing in the blood. The fructose in fruit is the natural sugar in fruit. Lactose is the natural fruit in milk, okay, so as a couple of examples. And then there's the added sugar. The average American consumes 71 grams, 17 spoonfuls of added sugar in a day, which is about 57 pounds of sugar consumed each year per person. That's absurd. Okay. The American Heart Association and the World Health Organization have similar recommendations as to limits of added sugar in your food or in a day. It comes out to be about 25 to 30 grams of added sugar is the limit for an adult, or about 5 to 10% of your total intake. Here is some added sugar in some of the food. So at the top, I have the daily added sugar limit for your gender up there. And then there's a bunch of different food items here that I just wanted to highlight. Pepsi for 20 ounces, 69 grams of added sugar. That is 17¼ spoonfuls of sugar. Okay, if I were to take a 20-ounce bottle and spoon 17¼ spoonfuls of sugar and told you to drink it, you would think I'm crazy. But if I handed you a Pepsi, would you drink it? It's the same thing, okay? Granola, people think that they're doing themselves a healthy gesture by buying granola. Granola is just oats and sugar, okay? So they add a lot of sugar. You can make it yourself, right? Just bake some oats, add a little sugar to it, and boom, you have granola. For 2/3 of a cup, you've got 11 grams of added sugar. It's quite a lot. Yoplait, so this is not just Yoplait, this is any yogurt. A lot of yogurts have added sugar, and like a lot of added sugar. Okay, this is for a 6-ounce container, 19 grams of added sugar. That's 5 spoonfuls of sugar in a 6-ounce container. Okay, yes, yogurt has health benefits with the probiotics, but it kind of doesn't matter anymore when you add all that sugar, okay? So just be, knowledgeable and aware of how much sugar is added to your yogurt. The best would be to get a plain yogurt where it doesn't have any sweetener, and you add your own, right? You can even add some fruit to make it naturally sweet, or applesauce, or some jam if that's your jam, okay? And then we've got barbecue sauce. If you love barbecue sauce, you're gonna hate me. I'm sorry, I'm just a deliverer of the truth here. For 2 tablespoons of barbecue sauce, 18 grams of added sugar. That is 4.5 spoonfuls of sugar. That's a lot. Ketchup is just a little under 8 grams of sugar for 2 tablespoons. So for 1 tablespoon of ketchup, you are adding a spoonful of sugar. Maybe you want to try dipping your French fries in sugar next time. All right, so I'm giving you guys a lot of information. You might be overwhelmed at this point. If you are, don't worry. I'm going to sum it all up for you, but here's the most important slide for you. If you are drinking anything other than water, coffee, and tea without added sugar, you are drinking sugar, okay? I wouldn't drink anything more than this. Otherwise, you're drinking sugar, right? So do not waste your calories on drinks. If you are drinking anything other than these 3 things with added sugar, this is where you should start. If you're thinking about making any changes in your lifestyle, if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to be healthier, this is where to start, okay? Fix your drinks, okay? It's really hard to tell what's in our food and drink. Sugar tends to sneak its way into our food and drink, and that's where reading the label comes in. That's what I'm gonna teach you, okay? So there's 2 labels here. On the left-hand side, you see the old label. On the right-hand side, you see the new label. And by 2021, all foods will have the new label, the right-hand label. Okay, so there's some differences here I'm gonna show you. Of course, you can see the calories and the serving size and the servings per container are all nice and big and bolded, okay? This is important, and we'll talk about why in a moment. You can see here, there's calories from fat on the old label, and they've removed that. And we know this because we know why, because there's a difference between healthy fat and unhealthy fat, right? Before, there was that low fat craze. I'm sure some of my older participant attendees here grew up with this idea that fat is bad, eat low fat. Well, we know now that there are 2 types of fats, good fats and bad fats. So this statement, calories from fat, 72 calories, it's not telling us anything, right? It's not giving us any real information, so that's gone. Then we have our total fat. This is all the same here, but I just wanted to highlight here that total fat makes up saturated fat, trans fat, and unsaturated fat. It isn't required to list the unsaturated fat. You'll see a lot of food products will, especially if they're high in unsaturated fat, which is a good thing, but it's not required. So in order to find out what the unsaturated fat is, you just take the total fat and subtract these 2, the saturated and trans fat, and you'll get your unsaturated fat. Okay. And then we have total carbs, as I mentioned. There's our fiber, total sugars, and then here's that added sugar row. That was added. This wasn't here before. So before this label came out, which was in 2015, I was in grad school when this came out. Yeah, so I actually did my thesis on this exactly. Anyway, we didn't know what was added before, right? So we only knew that there was 1 gram or 10 grams. Did the food supply company put that in? Did the manufacturer put that in? Or is it natural to the food? We didn't know, but now we do. So that's really good. And then at the bottom here, we have micronutrients. Vitamin A was taken away and vitamin C was taken away, and they added vitamin D and potassium. Okay, so those are the major differences. I'm going to teach you how to read this label in in the next slide. Okay, let me just get rid of these stuff. Okay. Okay, so how do we read a label? I don't have the new label here, but you get the idea with this. So I'm just going to show you here. I like this image. So number 1, you start here. You look at the serving size. It's 1 cup. Underneath that, it says servings per container is 2, which is 2 cups, right? We know that there's 2 servings in the whole box, and we know 1 serving is 1 cup. So we know the whole box has 2 cups in it. If you eat that whole box, that whole container of food, you now have to multiply all of these nutrients by 2. Okay? Check your calories. I'm not going to talk much about calories. It's really dependent on what your goals are. If you're trying to lose weight, you might want to, just watch these. But for the sake of learning how to read this label, we're not going to focus on it. All right, so there's 2 main categories here. There's these guys, the total fat, cholesterol, and sodium, which we want to limit. And then there's the ones we want more of, which is the fiber and the micronutrients down here. All right, so I do want to mention here, as I mentioned, the unsaturated fat is not listed or it's not required to be on the label. However, saturated and trans fat are required. So what I want to just point out here, we're not necessarily needing to limit total fat. We want to limit the saturated and trans fat. So if you have a food item that is rich in plant-based fats, or conversely, do not have any meat or dairy in them or coconut oil, we can safely say that even though it's a high amount of fat, it's a good fat, right? Because it's coming from plant-based sources. So if it's high in fat and it's a vegan product and it's not coconut oil, most likely it's okay. It's going to be a good fat. So we don't have to necessarily worry about the total fat. Cholesterol, as I mentioned, we don't really have to watch that either. So this is an old image, but we'll just group them all together here. But you don't really have to worry about cholesterol. And then sodium, that's your salt. We do have to worry about that, okay? And then we've got fiber and the micronutrients. We talked all about the fiber and why that's good. These you want more of. So how do we know what's a lot or a little? Well, we can actually use this percent daily value column right here on the right hand side right here. The rule here is 5-20. 5% or less is low, 20% or more is high. Okay, so looking at this percent daily value, if the number is closer to 5 or it's less, it's low. 20 or more is high. So saturated fat's 15%, that's pretty close to 20. It's a high amount of saturated fat in this food item. Sodium, 20%, high in salt, too much salt, right? Fiber, 0, not a good source of fiber. Looking at the micronutrients on the bottom, you got calcium, which is 20%, so that's a good source of calcium, but the other nutrients are pretty low. They're closer to 5, okay? Okay, so generally when we're looking at a label, a healthy item has lots of fiber and vitamins and minerals. Unhealthy items have too much sugar or added sugars, too much salt or sodium, and too much saturated fat. So we also have our ingredients list, and this is more information that we can use. As I mentioned when we were talking about trans fats, ingredient list is really important. That's how we know if there's trans fats in our food, because the label won't tell us exactly. However, I do want to mention, so ingredient list is ordered from the greatest amount to the least amount of whatever's in that food, and to watch out for hidden sugar, okay? The reason I say that, these are all different names for sugar. There's more, actually. I just couldn't fit them all on the slide. So here's the ones that looked nice. Okay, there's a lot of names for sugar, and there's a reason. They're not trying to make it easy. They're not going to just, you know, these food supply manufacturers are not going to just say, hey, look, there's lots of sugar in my food. They might put some other name. They might put honey because they think that sounds better and people think honey is healthy. Well, it's still sugar, okay? So watch out. If you see any of these things, it is sugar, all right? And they're adding it to your food. So let's just take a look at some examples of some items here. So cereal. When it comes to grains, I'm looking for two things majorly, protein and fiber. You can see on this label, they're pretty limited here. 1 gram of protein, 1 gram of fiber. But let's take a look at the ingredient list. We have first ingredient, whole grain corn. Okay, that's great. Second ingredient, sugar. Okay, if sugar's in the first 3 ingredients of a food item, it's probably all sugar. Okay, so just be aware of that. There are better cereals, and I'm about to show you my next one. And I joke, and I think I should be sponsored by Kashi at this point. I should write them a letter because I recommend this to all of my patients. I eat this myself. So there's lots of different flavors, and they've actually added more flavors since I've made this slide. Here's why it's so amazing. All right, so for 1 cup of, and this is the label for Kashi Go Lean. They've actually changed this label. It's 1.25 cups is the serving size. But take a look at this. Dietary fiber, 10 grams, protein, 13 grams. Oh, that's a lot. Guess what? This fills you up, okay? Now, a lot of people are probably looking at this and saying that doesn't look so good. It is pretty plain, I'll be honest, but what I like to do is I get this one and the chocolate one, and actually more recently the peanut butter is actually really good. What I do is I do half and half. I do a 1/2 cup of the original and 1/2 cup of the flavored, because that's gonna have more sugar, of course. And I mix them. So I get the benefits of the flavor and the benefits of the nutrition. All right, popcorn, it's a great snack. Take a look at the fiber, 5 grams of dietary fiber, percent daily value, 20%, right? Of course, you're not gonna wanna pick a popcorn full of butter, full of salt, full of sugar, right? So just being aware of that. But popcorn is a really good source of fiber and a very satiating snack. Tastykakes. I gotta talk about Tastykakes being in Philadelphia. Okay, ingredient list. Let's just take a look. Enriched flour. There's that enriched flour we talked about, right? And you can see they only added those 5 nutrients, which are all B vitamins right there. I just drew on what I want to do, so I'm going to remove that. Second ingredient, water. Third, apples. Fourth, sugar. Fifth, high fructose corn syrup. Then vegetable shortening. What's that? Oh, it's a partially hydrogenated oil. All of these hydrogenated oils are in here, but look, 0 grams trans fat. Okay, so you see, you got to read your labels. You got to read the ingredient list. You got to read the labels here. Saturated fat, 29%. That's a lot, right? So you can see 30 grams of sugar, right? There's that added sugar. This is for 1 pie, 320 calories for that 1 pie. All right, so you can see we want to look for more fiber, less sugar, no hydrogenated oils. All right, so am I telling you you can never eat a Tastykake again? No, they're good. They taste good. Everything in moderation. I call it the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, do what you're supposed to do, right? Eat the way I'm telling you to eat. 20% of the time, have a Tastykake, have dessert, do what you want, right? Don't go crazy, but have a little of something. You know, you can't eat everything you want all the time. That just doesn't work, okay? So eating in moderation, right? This idea of eating everything in moderation is very difficult for some people to understand. But how well you can maintain a lifestyle pattern to produce the results you are looking to achieve is really what it's about. You know, what strategies can you incorporate in your everyday that don't make it feel like a diet, okay? And now we're going to talk a little bit more about actually implementing some of these things. So portion control. What we eat is important, but how much we eat is just as important, right? So you're probably looking at these portions. This looks nice, right? And let me show you how to make these meals up. Before I do, let's just talk about portion distortion. Over the past, this says 20 years ago, this is probably an old slide, so more like 30, 40 years ago, right? Portions over the past 30, 40 years, portions have increased like crazy, right? You can see this burger, which is 300 calories, 333 calories, is now more like a 600 calorie burger. That's a 300 calorie difference in just the portion size. Well, we know portions have gotten bigger. We know that obesity is an epidemic in America and across the globe, and portion control or portion sizes have been a really big part and have played a really large part in that. So let's talk about what a proper portion is. Here we are. Half your plate should be non-starchy vegetables. Now, I do want to mention that there is a difference between non-starchy vegetables and starchy vegetables, and you see them listed here. So your non-starchy vegetables are going to take up half your plate. And you can see, you can do something like this, where they have a salad and cooked vegetables. You could also do all salad. You could also do all cooked vegetables. I really don't care. I just want some more plants on your plate. Your starchy vegetables are going to go in your starch portion of the plate. And those include corn, peas, beans, potatoes, any kind, yams, succotash, winter squash. These are your starchy vegetables, okay? Now, if you don't want to have one of those starchy vegetables, you don't have to. Choose rice, pasta, bread, rye, cereal, oatmeal, crackers, pretzels, any grain. Of course, choosing whole or unrefined grains is best, like brown or wild rice, 100% whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, things like that, okay? So this is it. And then your protein portion should be a quarter of your plate as well. So biggest portion on your plate should be vegetables. Protein and starch should be smaller, okay? If you ever get one of those takeout containers, like a platter off the food trucks or whatever, you know, you get like your meat and your rice and your salad. Usually the biggest portion is the meat, then your rice, and then your small portion of vegetables. So we're just gonna change those portions up a little bit and you'll get more plants. How do we know what's a good portion for us? We can use our hands. Okay, palm of your hand is the portion of your protein. Palm of your hand, take a look at your hand right now. Palm of your hand is the portion of your starch, okay? And then two hands together from thumb to thumb, are your vegetables, okay? So this is really what it's about. Now, if I were to say, yeah, you can only have this much meat or protein and this much starch, you're probably thinking, well, I'm gonna be hungry. No, you're not, as long as you make two hands your vegetables, okay? Not only that, but with a large glass of water, you're gonna be full. Oop. There we go, going the right way. Here's just some cute little images that help you measure different sizes of portions, right? Like a baseball is about the size of a cup, which is a good portion size for fruit. A cassette tape, for those that know what that is, goodness. That's a slice of bread. If you fold it in half, it's about the same thickness as a slice of bread, right? So there's lots of tools to help you measure your portions. I do want to mention this study. So this study has been done many times. For the sake of ease, I'm going to quote the smaller plate study, which was an experiment conducted by Dr. Wansik and Dr. Van Ittersum. So basically what they did was they gave these two plates to two different groups of participants, and they said, rate your cues of hunger and how satiated or how full you feel after the meal. Well, the people that ate the plate on the left said they were hungry after the meal. The people that ate the plate on the right-hand side said they were full after the meal. Okay, let me tell you, this and this is the same portion. It's the same portion. It's just a different plate size. So they did a 12-inch diameter plate versus a 10-inch diameter plate, and they found across the board that people perceived the smaller plate as more food, and it looks like more food. So you can actually trick your brain into thinking you're eating more, okay? So first thing I would do if you eat on big plateware and you're trying to reduce your portion size, get rid of those plates, get yourself some smaller plateware, okay? All right, so portion control put to action. Use your hands as measurements, as I mentioned, using smaller plateware. Pre-plating your food, right? So rather than a family style type of deal where all of the food is in front of you, pre-plate it, put the other food away. This is gonna help you control your portions a little bit better. versus if the plate's right in front of you of food, you're probably going to go for seconds. Socialize while eating. Okay, you'll eat slower. Okay, and in fact, it takes 20 minutes for your body and your brain to communicate, your stomach and your brain to communicate. So if you eat faster than 20 minutes, which most people do, they're not giving their body a chance to tell the brain, hey, I'm full, stop. Right? So eating slower is going to be better. That's why socializing is better. Eliminate distractions. Focus on your food. Okay, we tend to overeat when we're not paying attention to our food. Think about sitting in front of the TV with a big thing of chips or popcorn or whatever your poison is, right? You're going to eat, you're going to sit and watch the TV and eat, and then you're going to put your hand in the bowl and there's nothing there. You weren't focused on your food, you're focused on whatever you're watching, and you're not enjoying the food, right? So limit your distractions. Chew, okay, chew. The next time you eat, I challenge you to chew that bite 20 times. You're going to be chewing liquid, right? You're going to be chewing nothing. By chewing, you're actually going to help the digestion happen. The beginning of digestion happens in the mouth, right? You are masticating the food. So chew your food well. You'll start your digestion. You'll eat slower, right? You might eat less. Eat slowly, put your fork down between bites. And another thing is to drink a large glass of water with a meal. This is where a lot of people ask me a lot of questions. So should I drink with my food, without, or should I drink before, should I drink after? Depends on what your goals are, right? If you're trying to gain weight, you're trying to get more food in, I would say do not drink while you're eating because that's going to fill you up. If you're trying to lose weight, maybe even drink a large glass before you even sit down to eat, because that kind of fills you up a little bit. Another thing to mention, your body can't tell the difference between hunger and thirst. So if you're feeling hungry, you might actually just be thirsty, okay? So if you tend not to drink enough water throughout the day, try drinking a big glass of water when you start feeling hungry. See if that took care of it. If it didn't, have yourself a meal or a snack or whatever it might be. Okay, so the last bit of this presentation, I'm almost done. Bear with me here. I wanted to do some nutrition myth busters because there is a lot of information out there that's not always right. Nutrition tends to become an emotional topic. There is a lot of misinformation out there. People have strong opinions. You know, food is a part of our everyday life. It's part of our culture. It's part of our preferences. It's part of what makes us makes up how we feel. It's what makes up our health status. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Everybody eats, right? So food becomes emotional, and it's not. It's a science. Okay. So and then again, there's media, right? Media tends to play a role in trying to sway people one way or another for a reason, right? If you watch the news, you know that that's happening all the time. So it's important to look for evidence-based information, and that's what I'm going to be presenting to you all about, and that's what I have been presenting to you all about. Okay, so myth: a low-carb diet or keto is better than a low-fat diet for weight loss. Okay, fact: weight loss occurs due to a caloric deficit. We know this. Okay. A study from the Stanford University School of Medicine, funded by the National Institute of Health, did a randomized year-long study comparing a low-fat diet versus a low-carb diet. It included about 500 participants, and the ages were about 18 to 50. The study made several conclusions, but the overall finding was that both groups lost weight, neither group statistically significant more than the other. So you can lose weight using really any diet, but it's really about what you can stick to, right? We're not going to try and go on a diet like a keto diet and never eat carbs again. So just to give you an idea, if you don't know what the keto diet is, it's low to no carbs, high fat, and moderate protein. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit more about keto. I'm going to go off topic just a bit, just to talk a little bit about the keto diet because it's getting a lot of attention out there. And I have so many patients coming in and asking me about it. So as I mentioned, the keto is high in fat. So many saturated fats, right? You're eliminating carbs, so you're totally eliminating fruits and whole grains or any kind of grains, which have many nutrients, as I showed you. So with keto, a lot of people become kind of obsessive because they see this weight loss happen very quickly, and that's exciting and motivating. However, you are losing mostly water weight. You see quick results because the carbs are stored as glycogen, right? You use carbohydrates as energy. Anything extra is stored as glycogen in our liver and our muscles. For every 1 gram of glycogen stored, 3 grams of water is stored with it. So when you deplete your glycogen storage, you're depleting all that water. That's a lot of water. So you're mostly losing water at the beginning. However, so you are getting those short-term benefits, I guess you can call them benefits or excitement, right, of weight loss. But what you're not seeing is the longer-term consequences that happen inside, right? High cholesterol. So I've seen a lot of patients come in to see me because they've developed high cholesterol after doing a keto diet. I've worked with these patients. I've helped them balance their diet. They're eating carbs. They're feeling more satiated. They're feeling, they're eating fiber-rich carbs. I'm teaching them to eat the right types of carbs. And they've actually lost more weight on, eating the diet that I prescribe to them than the keto diet. Okay, so the other thing I just want to mention is use your brain for a minute, right? Our cells are made up of 3 macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. If you eliminate one of those things, what's happening to your cells? You're not giving your body what it needs. And I mentioned carbohydrates is the most preferred source of energy. It's what the brain uses, okay? So you need carbs. I would never eliminate them. I would never eliminate any food group, not only because it's not healthy, but also it's not maintainable. We're talking about what we can do over time for a long period of time. No more diets. Diets don't work. We just got to figure out what's going to work for us and what we can do over a long period of time. Okay, go to the next slide here. Myth: carbs are bad for you. Okay, so it's just continuing that little bit of that conversation. So fact, not all carbs are created equal. We know that there's simple carbs and added sugars, and those things should be limited, choosing whole grains or fiber-rich carbs whenever possible. Myth: coconut oil is good for your health. Fact: coconut oil is a saturated fat and should be used sparingly. Okay, I am going to talk a little bit more about this as well. So coconut oil is about 90% saturated fat, which is a higher percentage than butter, which is 64% saturated fat, beef fat, which is 40%, and even lard, which is also 40% fat of saturated fat. So coconut oil is a saturated fat, which is linked to heart disease. Unique to coconut oil is that it can increase your HDL cholesterol, so your good cholesterol, more than other saturated fats. However, it also increases your bad cholesterol and your total cholesterol. There are other vegetable oils that you can use that do both lowering of the LDL and increasing your HDL. And that's going to be your vegetable oils like olive oil, canola oil, things like that. Furthermore, earlier this month, actually like 2 weeks ago, I had to add this. I changed my slide a bit and added this in. A new meta-analysis came out showing that coconut oil consumption leads to higher levels of LDL cholesterol compared with other vegetable oils. The study found that when they compared with palm oil, which is another saturated fat, coconut oil also significantly increased total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and HDL cholesterol, but did not impact triglycerides. Many consumers believe coconut oil to be healthy because coconut oil is classified as a medium chain fatty acid, which is thought to be healthier due to rapid absorption and metabolism, ultimately providing less calories than the long chain triglycerides. However, coconut oil actually behaves more like a long chain fatty acid. The meta-analysis concludes that about a quarter of coconut fat consists of the long chain saturated fatty acids, and that consuming coconut oil holds no benefits with regards to both fatness, inflammation, blood sugar, or heart health. The study goes on to state that the opposite is true in that coconut oil, high consumptions of coconut consumption increases your bad LDL cholesterol and thus may increase your risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, I will say limited sporadic use is unlikely to have detrimental effects, but just choose a vegetable oil most of the time that's going to do the good stuff for you. So like a vegetable oil like olive or canola oil is going to be your best option. Okay. Myth: margarine is bad for you. Fact: margarine has been reformulated to exclude trans fats. So margarine is actually superior to butter when it comes to heart health because it's those vegetable oils, okay? Butter is a saturated fat. Those are the ones we need to limit, okay? So margarine was considered unhealthy because it had those trans fats, but they've reformulated that recipe. Margarine is also cheaper, okay? All right, myth: detox diets clean or cleanse your body. Okay, fact, there's no such thing as a detox diet. Our bodies are equipped with various organs, which does all the detoxing our bodies need, okay? Liver, kidneys, lungs, other organs, they are constantly working to remove substances or waste products out of our bodies, okay? I do want to mention that one study, which is the second to last reference, where am I? Yeah, the second to last reference, found that doing a green smoothie cleanse, after doing a green smoothie cleanse, a woman developed acute kidney failure injury with the potential of it progressing to end-stage renal disease. A case study, which is referenced at the bottom, found that after a woman consumed the Yogi Detox tea 3 times a day for 2 weeks, actually developed acute liver failure. So it's important that you discuss herbal medications and supplements with your doctor or your dietitian before consuming them. We don't need anything to help us detox anything, okay? Just eat healthy food. All right, myth, fresh produce is more nutritious than frozen produce. So I made that error and said fresh produce at the beginning. I took it back. It's actually fresh and frozen produce were found to have similar nutritional content. So I do want to just mention fresh produce start to lose their nutrient bioavailability. That's the amount of nutrients that are available for absorption right after they're picked, okay? Typically, we have no idea when our produce is picked. How long was it stored before being shipped to the grocery store? How long did it take to get the produce on the display shelves? And then how long did it sit on the shelves before we actually bought them? And then how long did it take for us to actually consume them out of our refrigerators, right? So there's a lot of time. There's a huge factor in time that we're not taking into consideration. And all of that time, exposure to air, exposure to light, actually decreases some of those nutrients available for absorption. So I would actually maybe say that frozen produce might be a better option because it's picked right away and then flash frozen, and that's it. So it might be holding those nutrients a little bit better than the fresh produce. Either way, pick what you prefer, right? Pick whatever suits your taste, your budget, and your lifestyle. I would also say canned produce works well as well, right? They do have some added salt or added sugar depending on what it is, right? Like peaches, for example, might be stored in a syrup. So maybe just choose the ones that are stored in water or light juice versus the heavy syrups. Same thing with same thing with vegetables. We don't want them packed in a salt, right? Or we want no salt added. So look for a low sodium or no salt added option when it comes to canned vegetables. But really the idea here is the more produce you eat, the more fruits and vegetables you eat, whether they're fresh, frozen, or canned, the better it is. All right, so all in all, be smart. Be careful where you obtain your nutrition information. Check the date. What was the publication of that article that you read? Like, when was that? Has it been updated? Okay, because nutrition science is happening all the time. It's being updated all the time. So it's important that the resource you're reading is also updated with that information. Make sure it's evidence-based. Is the information supported by evidence? Are the links functional? Are the resources referenced? Are the resources peer-reviewed or unreviewed, right? So a lot of things go into this. What is the source of the information? Who's the author? Who's the publisher? The source, the sponsor, right? Is someone paying someone to say something? Dr. Oz, sorry, had to do it for all those dietitians out there. Dr. Oz, yeah, it's all about money, right? He's on TV. Is the author credentialed or qualified to be giving nutrition advice? We know that dietitians are the experts in nutrition, okay? So if a doctor is giving information on something they might not be, qualified to do, and they might be, but you have to just realize, whoever is giving that information, they need to be credentialed or qualified or have the right information before presenting it. Does the URL reveal anything about the source? .gov, .mil, .edu, .net, .org, .com. There's all these different ones. .com, I have a .com. I could be anybody, right? So just being aware of that. Does the language or tone seem unbiased and free of emotion? Okay, this is kind of where media comes in, trying to cause some emotion for you. And I think this is why nutritional science has become this emotional topic, even though it's not, it's the science, right? Does the article address both sides of the argument, right? So, just like you have to hear two sides of the story. You got to know what's going on, and then you decide with the information presented what is right or what's the best option for you. I do want to just go back because I've been thinking about it when I talked about a doctor giving information about nutrition. They might know well, but a personal trainer, for example, should not be giving nutrition advice. They are a personal trainer, right? So that you need to see a nutrition specialist for nutrition advice. That doesn't include your aunt or an article that you read, unless it's well supported and it's well, someone credentialed had written it and it's got all these check marks here. All right, so the idea here is just to be smart and to think about where your information is coming before you take it into heart, okay? All right, and that's all I have. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out if you want to come in for nutrition counseling. I'm here at Philadelphia Fight. Any future presentations or lectures, or simply you want to collaborate in the community, I'd love to hear from you. Perhaps your work organization and us would benefit from working and joining forces, so feel free to reach out. Take a look at the question you jotted down at the beginning. Did I answer it? And if I didn't, feel free to ask now. So we'll take some question and answer now. All right, I think I have a few. Okay. Will this be emailed or available at the completion?
Yes, we will be archiving the webinar and we will email a link to that archived webinar after the fact.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kyle. All right, so I answered that. Okay. All right. You guys keep your questions coming. Okay, I have a couple right now. I'm just going to read through before I answer them. But send your question in. If I answered your question, maybe just send me a statement that I answered your question, just so I know that you guys are participating. Okay. Okay, I'm going to answer a couple of questions I have here. The question is, finding good produce can be difficult. What are some practical resources for folks looking for affordable and quality produce? So as I mentioned, you know, fresh, frozen, or canned are options. I definitely look for sales. Buying fruits and vegetables in bulk is a really good option. For example, if you buy a bag of apples versus by the pound, that could be a better option and more affordable. Other things that are becoming more popular are these different organizations that have like ugly produce that you can buy. So basically, when it comes to grocery shops buying and selling produce, they want something that looks nice, right? I remember I attended FNCE. It's a food and nutrition conference and expo. It's an organization for nutrition professionals. I attended the organization, the conference. This was a few years ago, and there was this huge slide, this huge picture of a field of lettuce, and they told us that all of that lettuce was going to waste because it wasn't perfectly shaped to fit in the plastic bags that they have at the manufacturer. So all of it was going to be thrown away. It's crazy, but this is what happens if there's like a little bruise, or if your eggplant is shaped something weird, like it doesn't normally look like, they toss it. So there's a lot of new organizations coming out to rescue these fruits and vegetables and actually send them out. Hungry Harvest is one of them. There are a bunch. If you just Google like ugly produce or like rescuing produce, you'll see a bunch of different options, and those are really affordable. And it also helps the planet. Okay, so this next question, what are your recommendations for providers seeking to help service recipients who have culturally informed dietary practices different than their own? This is a really good question. So it really is important. As I mentioned, food is all of these different things, including culture. So it's about getting familiar. I would definitely recommend that they see a dietitian, right? Because the dietitian has that knowledge of what is, you know, what makes up a healthy food item, and then they can look into it. I mean, I have patients coming in all the time telling me they eat X, Y, and Z, and some of these things I've never heard of. I look it up right in front of them, I Google it and say, oh, it's this. Let me look at a label, or let me look at the nutrition facts, and I decide with my knowledge, knowing, you know, is this something good? Okay, maybe it's not. I have a patient the other day, she's from somewhere in Africa, I forget exactly where, off the top of my head, but eats foods that I hadn't heard of before. I'm looking things up. She's telling me about this recipe that her family makes, and I look up YouTube videos, how do you make whatever this is? And I realized that she's in this sauce that she's creating. It's probably a really good, it's like a cassava leaf sauce. She's adding a whole bunch of peanut butter, a whole thing of oil, and it's like a lot of fat at once. And we're trying to work on weight management and losing weight. And so I just said, you know, make your sauce, but maybe just use a little bit, right? Don't use too much, right? So I'm not going to tell someone not to eat the foods that they're culturally used to eating. It's just about finding a balance between the portion control, right? The portion of that food, and making sure that it fits into their plan. Okay. Hope that answered your question. Any other questions? I don't think I have any more. So do you guys write down your questions? All right. Done. Yeah, I only got 4 questions, or actually 3 questions. Anything else? Am I missing it, or I guess no one's asking questions? All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, feel free to reach out. My information is right here, and have a good rest of your day.